Welcome to everybody. We're going to get started in just a second, but before we do, a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, Q&A, please ask questions. If you have any questions, a lot of you did submit questions ahead of time, and that's great, and we will try to weave those into the conversation. And if you haven't, you can actually chat into the chat box on Zoom, and I will try to weave those into our conversation with Mary today. Secondly, we are on Twitter at AnyRoad or hashtag Polaris by AnyRoad. Please give us a shout out, ask questions. We'd love to hear from you. Number three, audio settings. You can adjust the audio on the bottom left of your Zoom screen and make sure that you can hear us. And number four, we are recording this, which is great because you can always refer to it. It will be on our website later on. All right, Mary, welcome. I also want to welcome everyone else. This is Polariss by AnyRoad. It is a series of interviews with marketing leaders on how to build impactful, lasting relationships with consumers. I'm Daniel Yaffe. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at AnyRoad. For those of you who are less familiar, founded in 2012, we're an experiential data platform for brands to scale and optimize customer experiences that change behavior. Companies like Anheuser-Busch, Michaels, Caruso, and Dick's Sporting Goods all count on AnyRoad to capture and analyze all of their experiential records from activations, appointments, and tours and classes. If your brand is investing in experiential, please reach out or visit our website at anyroad.com. Our guest today, again, is Mary Lague. Welcome. Vice President of Research at Pilot44 Labs.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Excited to jump in with you today. I would love to hear about your background, about Pilot44, and how you're helping brands accelerate innovation and drive growth.
Sure. So yeah, I'm Mary Lague. I'm the VP of Research at Pilot44. I've been with the company for a little over 6 years now, but I've been in the research world for about 15. Before Pilot44, I was working in consumer research at the Nielsen Company for several years. Really focused on consumer surveys, product testing, really helping specifically CPG brands optimize their product and positioning before going to market. So that kind of really primed me for my transition to Pilot44, where I'm still focusing quite a bit on CPG, but more from the technology, business model innovation, and digital transformation side of things, which is also very exciting. So to give you a bit of background on Pilot44, we're a corporate venture studio that was created in 2014. I joined the company in 2015 when we were 3 people in an attic. Now we're 30 plus people with offices in San Francisco and Singapore. So it's been a really fun ride seeing the company grow and also seeing how things have changed with our brand clients over the past 5 to 6 years. And what we do in a nutshell is we work with a lot of today's largest brands and retailers to really help them implement new and more modern approaches to growth and innovation, really allowing them to move faster, innovate at the speed of a startup, and deliver outcomes in a fraction of the time and ideally at a fraction of the cost. And we do that through, our approach is very much taking an outside-in approach, and we believe that the fastest way to innovate is to look to the startup ecosystem, really taking a look at where disruption is coming from startups and entrepreneurs, and how do you bring that into the business? And from there, you can unlock a lot of great ways to partner, learn together, and do things in a really lean way that really benefits both sides of the business.
That's awesome. So I'd love to, you're not exactly an agency. I'd love to hear just kind of what that relationship looks like when you're working, and maybe you can give us some examples of companies that you do work with.
Yeah, for sure. We used to call ourselves an innovation agency, and I think that the word agency makes you think that we're doing creative campaigns or ad campaigns, and that's not what we do. We're definitely creative people, but we're not a creative agency. We're really here to help drive innovation and digital transformation. We have 3 different groups within our organization. I lead the research team. The research team is really focused on just really helping our clients understand emerging technologies. What's coming out of the startup ecosystem, whether it's a technology, a new channel that's emerging, a new business model that could disrupt their business. And we believe that by spotting these disruptions earlier, you can start building resiliency, start building those capabilities and partnering with the startups and looking to them as partners versus competitors. We also have a digital transformation side that's more focused on the activations. So we work really closely with them, where the research team is about helping you find those partners and those opportunities. And then our digital strategy team will actually help you implement pilots in market, manage all the heavy lifting from the paperwork, the legal approvals, designing KPIs and making sure it's set up for success, and really managing the end-to-end. So what we do is we really take a lot of the heavy lifting off of our clients' plates. A lot of the times these kind of lean early stage innovations are not top of mind for them. And we really help them innovate faster and get to learnings faster and cut through the red tape that's typically apparent at a lot of these big organizations.
That's awesome. Who within the organizations do you usually work with?
It really varies. A lot of the times, a lot of big brands and retailers have innovation teams. So we partner really closely to power their internal innovation programs. We'll work with the ventures teams, sales and marketing, the brands directly. We also have a lot of work going on in supply chain, especially as e-commerce begins to grow. There's a big need to innovate the supply chain and be more nimble. So we're working a lot directly with supply chain teams as well. So it really runs the gamut.
Awesome. Obviously, the theme of today is why brands are shifting from traditional advertising to branded experiences. I know you guys work with clients, Procter Gamble, Nestle, Clorox. I'm curious why you think you're seeing this trend and maybe what factors are driving that shift.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's a big one kind of sitting at the heart of this is that consumers don't really want to be advertised to anymore. We see this play out with more and more people, adopting ad blockers. They're spending more time on streaming platforms that have no ads. Just for the most part, it's just getting really hard to reach the consumer with traditional advertising. Also, you see third-party cookies going away. So a lot of the ad capabilities are also going away in that respect. But also going along with that, you're just seeing the rise of more and more digital experiences, e-commerce capabilities, mobile. It's really created this seamless world where consumers can discover and engage with brands anywhere and on their own terms. And they're really looking for this experience to be really seamless across multiple touch points. So the path to purchase has just dramatically changed. It's no longer, I'm going to run this big ad campaign on TV and drive people to Target. The path to purchase is a lot more fragmented. So brands just need to be present at all the different touch points where their consumers are, and they need to do that in a way that's authentic and adds value versus an intrusive ad that kind of interrupts their experience. So overall, this is just kind of laddering up to this need to create more experiences versus ads.
Cool. Awesome. There's a question coming in that I think is relevant just to set the table here. The difference between an experience and a branded experience. I can give my answer, which is if you are a brand that's using an experience to change behavior or change perception, that's a branded experience.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is you guys are working with some of the largest corporations in the world. Those are branded experiences. Maybe differentiation for us, and I don't know if you guys think about this as well, but that's very different than the experience of just e-commerce checkout, right? So e-commerce checkout is not really a branded experience, but that is obviously, there are customer experience platforms out there for that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Awesome. Thanks for the question, Emilio. So all of this sounds super interesting, and I can imagine it has huge implications for the future of retail as well, right? I mean, as far as what retailers are doing to drive these branded experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. You see this play out, especially in the past few years, where more and more traditional retailers are, going bankrupt. They're going out of business. More brick and mortar is shuttering because they're not really adapting to the ways that consumers want to interact with retail anymore. And I think more and more we're going to see retailers move away from these places to purely transact, to these places where you're going to physically experience a product, interact with brands, probably interact with other shoppers. They're going to become more social. The retailers that are really, really winning in this space are finding ways to keep people in the stores for longer, and really create that memorable experience that's emotional and drives that connection and gets people coming back. So I think more and more we're going to see retail continue to adapt to that. The structure of the store will change. There'll be more services weaved into the store environment, more experiential retail, showrooming, and also just more and more digital technology coming into the store, really designed as a way to get data, because that's really ultimately what a lot of this boils down to, is how do you build and maintain that direct relationship with these shoppers? And the great way to do that is by capturing their data.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're going to get into first party data a little bit more and how brands are using experiences to capture that first party data. Also relevant, Andy's asking a question. I'm going to phrase this in the conversation that we're in. We're talking about retail. Obviously, the last year, now 15 months, has potentially completely changed the face of retail. Andy's asking, do you expect any behavioral changes that come out of the pandemic regarding purchasing the habits or values? Anything that might be lasting post 2020?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of new behaviors that were learned during the pandemic that will probably stick around. We saw e-commerce adoption escalate, I think, 10 years in 3 months. And I don't think that behavior is going to go away. I think people have gotten accustomed specifically to convenience as being a big driver. And I think that's going to continue to be a big thing that consumers look for when they're determining where to shop and who to shop. Things like click and collect, these online to offline experiences, contactless delivery and contactless payments. I think a lot of it's going to center around, consumer expectations around convenience during the pandemic are probably at an all-time high. And I don't see that going away anytime soon.
Awesome. Let's jump back into what you guys do. Pilot44, it's in the name. You run pilots, you run testing, you iterate, you're agile, you figure out what's working, what's not. I'd love to hear some examples of pilots that maybe some of the favorite pilots that you've run or the most successful. What does that process look like? And if you can just tell us a couple stories there.
Yeah, absolutely. So our process, we always try to keep it lean. We're really designed to get things to market quickly. And our process starts with what we call the discovery phase. And that's really where we're trying to really understand what our clients' business challenge is, and how we can solve it. So this could be anything from, our brand doesn't have any relevance with Gen Z. How do we fix that? To I need to remove some friction in the delivery and the path to purchase for my DTC store. There's a variety of challenges we've worked on across a multitude of technologies. And what we do is we'll go out and we'll really provide a broad lens view of the landscape of what all of the different technologies and services that could solve that business challenge. And we'll work really closely with our clients. It's not just us going off on our own and coming up with an idea. We iterate really closely with the brand teams to make sure that we're designing a pilot that really solves their needs, and also aligns with the overall goals of the business. And then we also work really closely with them to design KPIs, success metrics, really just making sure that it's set up for success, and it's also realistic and scalable in the long run. We as I mentioned, we handle a lot of the heavy lifting. A great example of one we did recently was with Toll House cookies. We've been doing a lot of great work with brands that are really trying to tap into the power of the last mile and on-demand ecosystem. Obviously, a big driving force in the world of food, essentially what Toll House was looking to do was to understand if there was demand for Toll House cookies to be offered, already warm and cooked, and delivered to you on demand. So when you think of Toll House, it's a household brand name, but it's the brand that you bake at home. Thinking of it as something that's delivered ready to eat and warm and fresh is a totally different experience. So we were able to scale that up in 6 weeks in DC. We were able to take on a lot of the logistics stuff that a brand doesn't want to take care of. So things like hiring the restaurant workers, dealing with the legal and safety requirements for handling food, hiring the influencers to promote the campaign, buying the kitchen equipment. So you name it, we took care of it. We were able to run this really, really compelling pilot across 4 different delivery platforms from DoorDash to Postmates, making it really easy for consumers to discover this experience and also purchase it and to have it delivered on demand to their homes. So that was a really cool way to deliver a brand that's, a big household brand name, but in a totally different way that consumers hadn't experienced it before.
That's awesome. How did it go?
It went well. People loved it. We got great feedback on social media. So yeah, it was great.
That's fantastic. And does something like that usually, or do you see that rolling out as something bigger, or are they inspired to run other programs from that?
Yeah, a lot of the work we do, especially in last mile, does scale. The big thing that brands are trying to figure out is the cost of last mile is very high. A lot of the times the cost there and the cost for acquisition is really challenging. So a lot of these rapid tests and experiments, you can quickly figure out, like, does the DoorDash model make more sense than Uber Eats? Is the cost to acquire someone directly through their platform cheaper than acquiring them on Facebook? So you can really quickly test all these different levers and figure out how to scale in a way that's actually financially viable.
That's awesome. What kind of guidance would you give to an audience, anybody who might be listening that wants to start running experiences? All right, if I am the VP of marketing or a CMO of a CPG company, I know that the experience economy is booming. I want to take advantage of that. I want to participate and have these touch points with consumers. What guidance would you give?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think thinking of your brand as an experience is a big leap for a lot of brands and a lot of categories. I think the starting point is to really think beyond your product. I think really trying to thinking about what services and value-added experiences you can offer beyond that are logical extensions of your product. And we see this a lot across every category, from a lot of great innovation happening in oral care, where you see brands like Oral-B and Philips extending into things like dental insurance, giving you the ability to book dental appointments, wrapping around telehealth services. So really creating a whole ecosystem of services and products around your brand. Tide's another great example. They launched Tide cleaners. So really marrying up the superior product with the superior experience, which is a really powerful thing to unlock. So I think step one is kind of just getting out of, and I think this is a big challenge for CPG brands because they've been winning on the fact that they have great products for so long. But then thinking beyond that of what are the different experiences and services I can offer that really go hand in hand with my product, and how do I create a really compelling narrative around that?
That's awesome. Can you think of pilots that didn't work out? Ones that maybe were epic failures?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the benefit of pilots, is that they're really low risk and they're designed to be low cost. And if they don't work out, a lot of them don't. And that's just, it's really all about learning. So as long as you learn something, we consider the pilot successful. And I think some of the ones that don't work out, sometimes it just comes down to the KPIs or success criteria wasn't correct. A lot of the times you're looking for really quick impact on sales. And a lot of the times experiences is more about building that relationship. How do you foster that relationship over time and build, long-term loyalty and customer value? So seeing a big sales lift right out of the gate, a lot of the times is unrealistic, but they still want to see that. So if they don't, they consider it an unsuccessful pilot. And then sometimes it's just not the right fit. A lot of these pilots are really just trying to validate a hypothesis. So one example is, we did a vending pilot with a razor brand that was really designed to figure out what are the different touch points throughout the day that we could trigger an impulse purchase, or what are the other points throughout the day where someone might need a razor or a shaving kit. And the hypothesis there was that at the gym makes logical sense. So we ran a pilot that sold razors and shaving kits inside a few gyms in New York. We sold like 5 razors maybe. So from a sales standpoint, it was not successful. But what we learned from capturing the data and then emailing the people later was people don't really shave at the gym. They're usually in a rush. They'd rather just go home and do it. A lot of gyms, especially if you belong to like an Equinox, already have razors there. So there just wasn't a right fit. But we did learn that people did want deodorant or skincare products or makeup. A lot of the things that they forget that they really need. And then you can pivot and kind of focus the next phase of that vending pilot on the products that people actually want. So that was a great example of one that didn't really hit the mark on what the brand was looking to do, but I think there was a lot that was learned really quickly over the course of a couple of weeks in a real world environment that you can't get without piloting.
That's awesome. Now, a lot of brands come to us wanting to measure tests and pilots. And one thing we always say is that you can't create an experience and then just hope later on that you're going to get it, you're going to find out if it works or not. We always think about and compare it to Facebook ads or Google AdWords, right? You would never ever do one campaign, spend $500,000 and say, I think it worked, right?
Yeah.
We'll find out in 6 months. You find out right away, you iterate, you get the data, and then you optimize. And I think it sounds like you guys are doing the same with experiences, and we believe very much in line with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You can't just do one experience. It has to kind of build on itself.
Absolutely. Are there any unconventional pilots that you've done that are really out there that might help inspire some of the attendees?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot recently, actually. I feel like brands are really starting to push the envelope, especially during COVID, of what they're willing to do. We've been doing a lot of work helping brands enter the gaming and esports world. It's a huge, huge audience, largely untapped. I think there's close to 3 billion gamers worldwide right now, and they're a really hard audience to reach. It's Gen Z and younger. They definitely don't like ads. They don't want to be interrupted when they're gaming. And it's just really hard to get into that audience in an authentic way. And you think of brands like Mountain Dew, Red Bull, Taco Bell make perfect sense inside a video game or an esports tournament. But we're seeing a lot of brands that traditionally you would never think would make sense inside this world doing really, really amazing things. We did some work, really interesting pilot with Tampax. So you think, what is a women's brand doing in an esports tournament? And one of the things we were able to find that the female audience on the gaming space is growing rapidly. They just haven't really been empowered in the same way that men have, and they've been not as kind of vocal around their experience, and a lot of work being done to really empower them and bring them to the forefront. And it's a really great opportunity to build this really great, strong relationship with female gamers. So what we did in collaboration with a company called United Esports, which is a gaming agency, was Tampax hosted an all-female esports tournament. And as part of that, it was really designed to empower female gamers and also eliminate the stigma around periods and things like female health. And really bringing voice to this taboo topic in a really interesting and new way. They hosted a live panel with some of the top female gamers and streamers. They tapped into one of the most famous female streamers out there to promote it and also do Q&A. And one of the more interesting things they did was actually recruit an amateur esports tournament team themselves. So 4 kind of amateur gamers backed by Tampax. So all in all, it was just this really super holistic experience. And it wasn't about selling tampons. It was about driving conversation. It was about building community around the brand. And that's the kind of thing that really fosters that emotional connection with the brand. So when they're in the store next time, they're hopefully be more likely to purchase Tampax over another competitor. But really great example of the power of community, I feel.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It makes me think of Red Bull, right? Red Bull is an energy drink, and yet they have festivals where you fly planes off of boats and you do go-kart racing and all of this. It has nothing to do with the actual product itself. Our co-founder, our CEO, and my brother was one of the first Red Bull street teams here and worked in marketing when they first entered the US market. Fascinating, right? And it was all about these experiences and engaging people, not talking about the product, not talking about what's in the product, not even really, besides gives you wings, not even talking about what the product does.
Yeah, exactly. And it still makes sense. It still fits with the Red Bull brand too. They're great at that.
100%. I always think about this, like GoPro doesn't talk about the actual camera. It's about jumping out of planes and snowboarding.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Red Bull also does a lot of sponsorships. And I'm curious, when you think about sponsorships versus experiences, and it's probably a bit of a Venn diagram, how do you think about that? Are those things really that different? Are there some that might lend themselves better to certain brands and not as well to others?
Yeah, I definitely think sponsorships are valuable. It's a really great way to generate awareness for your brand. So if that's your goal, sponsorships can be great. And I think a lot of the times you see sponsorships going alongside with an experience. So I definitely think the two are not really competing with each other. I think there's a time and a place for either or both. It just, I think it just kind of comes back to this need for seamless integration and adding value. And I don't know how much value a sponsorship really adds to the consumer or how memorable, I don't know how many people remember the logo they saw on the bottom of the TV when they're watching a show or a tournament or something. So I think it's the experiences are much more memorable, especially if you're doing them in a way that's really adding value to whatever the consumer is doing at that time.
Yeah, but we did a Polaris session with the former chief growth officer of Coca-Cola, Francisco Crespo, and he very famously said that advertising will never drive loyalty. Right? You can see ads for Coca-Cola all day, every day. It's not until you actually have an experience with the brand does that actually drive loyalty. And so we're big believers in that as well. Mm-hmm. How do you measure pilots? When you're working with enterprises, what KPIs are you looking at, or are they looking at to see did this work or did this not?
Yeah, It varies pretty dramatically by pilot because these are pretty, they're small, they're quick. Usually you're trying to validate a specific learning or a specific hypothesis. Some of the big ones that I think are pretty consistent regardless is do consumers want this? So that's a big one. So, if you're trying to drive relevance with Gen Z and then no one from Gen Z joins the experience or responds favorably to it, this might not be the right fit. A couple others we look at is, we're always trying to think about scalability. So even if a pilot is super successful, if it's going to cost $200 per customer you acquire in the long run, it's probably not viable. Might be a time and place for it as a one-off or something that happens periodically, but we're always thinking about how to measure financial viability and what the customer acquisition cost is in the long run. And then also, is it scalable operationally? Is this going to require a huge heavy lift in terms of building new teams, new technologies? Can we leverage partners for this in the long run? Or how are we going to treat this from an operational standpoint when it's not just a small pilot? So I think, consumer demand and consumer acceptance of it, financial feasibility in the long run, as well as scalability.
Awesome. I want to jump to something we were talking about earlier, we mentioned first-party data. We have a lot of clients that are coming to us spinning up experiences, either doing them at no cost or break even as a loss leader to really get that first party data to build the direct consumer relationship. We're seeing the death of the cookie, GDPR, CCPA, the world's changing. I'm curious what you're seeing and if that is driving some of the pilots that you're doing with some of your clients.
Yeah, I would say first party data is probably the most asked about request we get from every brand. And I think especially, we have a lot of clients in the CPG space that never really had to think about this before. They've been selling through third-party retailers. The retailers own the consumer relationship, and that was fine. And then 5 years ago, we saw all this disruption from direct-to-consumer brands that kind of just really shook up every CPG brand, regardless of the category. And the reason why they were so successful is because they had that direct relationship. And it wasn't necessarily because they were selling direct, it was just because they had that data. And that data really helped them optimize their advertising, their products, how they communicated with consumers. And that's why, the Dollar Shave Clubs of the world were able to do what they did. And I think it just kind of took a little while for the bigger brands to realize, okay, I need to do this too. And they're all just really trying to catch up and build out. And it's not just about finding new ways to do, cookie-free advertising and targeting. It's about, we're helping a lot of our clients scale up their direct-to-consumer from start to finish, helping them figure out the platforms, the marketing and retention levers, how to do Facebook advertising. So yeah, it's a huge top of mind thing right now. Everyone's trying to figure out how to crack the code on first-party data in a way that's scalable, that's not going to cost them a fortune for all the data they're trying to get. Yeah,
that's super interesting. I'm curious. I don't believe you're a futurist, but I'm curious if you look in your crystal ball and you look towards the future, where we're at now, nobody could have ever imagined 10, definitely not 20 years ago. I'm curious what you think the next 10 years looks like.
Yeah, that's a great question. I aspire to be a futurist, so this is good practice.
Awesome.
So yeah, I think there's a couple really hot emerging trends that we're monitoring really closely. One of them, I think social is going to continue to be a huge thing that impacts the future of shopping. I think we've kind of barely cracked the surface of what that looks like. We have, shoppable Instagram and stuff like that. But I think now when you see the rise of things like live stream shopping and this kind of seamless merge of entertainment and media and social media and shopping, and, we look a lot to China for inspiration of what the future holds, and live streaming there is a $160 billion industry. Here, it's tiny, maybe 1% of that. So I think the upside potential, if that kind of takes off in the next few years, could be huge, and really changes the way that you go to market with a product and the experience you have to create around it to be compelling in a live video atmosphere. So that's definitely a big trend we're watching. I think the second piece is the rise of things like virtual worlds and NFTs and this really interesting blurring of the virtual and the physical world. Still really early now. We see NFTs. I don't think that's a fad. I think that that's going to stick around for a while. We're going to see digital products complementing physical. And if VR and AR takes off in the way that it's supposed to, and we have AR kind of integrated in our glasses and it's just part of our day-to-day lives, we're going to have people that are perpetually just have one foot in the virtual world and one foot in the physical world at all times. And that's going to dramatically change the way that people expect to interact with brands. And you see this already coming to life with what luxury brands and fashion is doing, creating all of these experiences inside of things like Roblox or inside Animal Crossing. It's going to be a new place for people to interact with brands that I don't think a lot of companies are thinking about yet. That stuff really excites me. I think that's going to be super cool in the next 5 to 10 years.
That's awesome. I just like a full integration. I guess it'll bring new meaning to omnichannel in the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. I want to get into some more questions. If anybody does have questions, we have a couple coming in. We have some more that were sent in ahead of time, but want to get into this. Please ask questions. We've got about 10 minutes left. We'll see if we can steal a couple extra minutes of Mary's time. This one's coming in from Neil. Has the effectiveness of traditional advertising diminished, or are tools for measuring just improving?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the effectiveness of traditional advertising is diminishing just because it's getting really, really hard to get traditional ads in front of consumers. I think I mentioned this earlier on, but people are downloading ad blockers. They're spending more time on ad-free platforms. They're just tuning out ads. And I think that's the reason why traditional advertising is just becoming less and less effective, is because it's just harder to reach consumers. You have to find workarounds for traditional advertising.
I think it's interesting if you look at a lot of these digital first companies, like the Warby Parkers of the world, they realized that the cost to acquire users was going up online. They've opened physical stores. And there's actually a fantastic article, maybe we can post it with this video, is all about that the store, the physical retail space is actually the new form of CAC, right? So it's actually a fantastic way to acquire users. Or in your case, or in our case of our clients, experiences, right? Experiences can be not only more effective, but can be cheaper than traditional advertising too.
Yeah, for sure.
This one's coming in from Bruno. How do you track and measure success for branded experiences?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one that's always really hard, especially if you're doing experiences in the offline world. It can be super challenging, which is why I'm actually super excited to be connected with AnyRoad. So I might actually toss that one back to Daniel. I'd love to, you guys exist to measure this. So would love to hear, because a lot of the times where, it's post-event surveys and things like that. Like, how are you capturing that in a digital way?
I don't want to spend all the time talking about this, but very high level. One of the things is that we've realized early on that a lot of companies are not tooled up to measure experiences, right? Experiential records don't sit in any other data system. And so it's looking at the before and after, it's looking at how things change. And so ultimately it's looking at how much are you spending on these experiences? What is the outcome? We have a framework here. We talk about one-dimensional metrics and three-dimensional metrics. One-dimensional metrics are in experiences. How many people went to this experience? How many touch points were there with consumers? Where three-dimensional metrics are impact metrics. So how did this experience, or in Mary's case, how did this pilot actually impact the end consumer, right? She talked about consumer love. How did this experience actually impact somebody's perception of the brand, or ultimately their long-term purchase behavior? And so that's what we do as a company, as a platform. Happy to teach you guys more about AnyRoad. We can talk about that on another call. All right, we got another question coming in from Kristen over at CVS Health. What are the trends you're seeing during the pandemic? We talked a little bit about this, but curious about on the virtual side, things that you've seen happening.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think obviously the big shift to online has been a big one. I think people really valuing convenience over everything else. So, rapid adoption of things like click and collect. A lot of retailers that weren't offering it before, it's now a huge part of their business. I think another big trend that's really interesting is just people spending more time at home and this transition to remote work. And if that becomes the normal, it kind of really dramatically changes the way people shop and how they discover products and also how they consume them. So a lot of the things we were used to getting out in the world, like, getting our nails done or getting a haircut or getting a facial, there's new products now that let you do that at home. So there's a whole new like category of at-home services and products that's emerged that I think is really interesting. And the last one I think is just really trying to recreate the store environment in an online world. So we're seeing a lot of really interesting startups using things like AR. So when you're in an e-commerce or brand.com, you can unlock an AR store and really go in and really physically see the products in 3D, interact with them almost as if you were physically in front of them. There's companies, startup called Hero is a great example of this, that basically takes that live chat button, but when you type into it, a real person pops up and you can actually do a video consultation with them. So if you're buying something like furniture, they can walk you around the store. Really powerful for items where you probably want to talk to a sales associate before you make a purchase. So a lot of really interesting trends happening that's trying to recreate the physical and the online world, which is really fascinating.
That's awesome. We're working with Kalia by Carrie Underwood. They have a one-to-one styling consultations that they're using AnyRoad for, and to measure the efficacy and long-term purchase behavior.
Oh, very cool.
Kelly, in relation to this, Kelly Elmore is asking, what is the first phase of getting back to in-person experiences? I'm in the office today for the first time in a long, long time. I'm curious what this looks like for branded experiences and your clients.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, well, at least in San Francisco, things seem to switch back to normal almost overnight. I don't think that we've seen, I thought people were going to be cautious about crowds, but not the case here. I can't speak to the rest of the country or the world. I think some of the really interesting experiences that I've seen are ones that are a bit more intimate, almost creating that kind of exclusive nature around the event, but also complementing it with a live stream or some sort of digital experience that people can join from home. So also kind of creates that kind of fear of missing out, makes people really want to be a part of it. And I think just continually to offer a lot of these tools that people got used to. So things like contactless payments, interacting at kiosks and things like that, creating the ability to unlock experiences on your mobile phone through QR codes. I think people have gotten really used to scanning QR codes during the pandemic. So I think just kind of weaving in a lot of those technologies that make people feel more comfortable going back to the real world are great. And also just maybe keeping the events a bit more intimate to start versus these huge festivals, even though I think music festivals are coming back pretty soon.
They're happening. There have been a couple of music festivals with not amazing musicians that are already selling out. People want to go.
Oh yeah.
This actually is along the lines of a question that Robin Clinton had asked a little bit earlier, which is, have QR codes lost their essence? Restaurants are using them for menu access, but just that alone, I've run into accessibility issues. I realize we're talking about retail, but clients are still thinking about this innovative technology. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I don't think we've truly unlocked the capability of QR codes here. Again, I go back to the example of China, where most shopping happens via QR code. There's stores there where you're just going around with your phone and interacting with products and getting product information and unlocking experiences all through QR codes. Here, it's been a little bit slower. I think there's been some interesting work done to unlock things like AR experiences, scanning packaging to get more information or story around the brand or its sustainability story, for example. So there's some interesting tests happening. I still think we have a ways to go on the adoption curve, but I do think COVID has helped that. I definitely am more comfortable pulling out my phone all the time now to scan a QR code, where usually if I saw a QR code, I'll be like, I'm not scanning that. So,
we're finally catching up to Japan and China on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Andy's asking, do you measure the emotional connection to brands as a result of the consumer interaction?
I mean, I wish. I think it's a little bit harder to measure. I think the emotional connection kind of plays out in measuring things like repeat purchase, long-term loyalty, lifetime value of the customer. But I think the emotional connection is something that's super important, and there probably needs to be some more work done to how do you actually capture that in a way that's measurable versus it's kind of esoteric right now.
So yeah, this is a piece of the puzzle and our methodology actually, which is looking at, you got to look at the before and after. You have to have the what we call the contextual data of who is a consumer and what is the relationship with the brand, and seeing how that changes from the experience or over time. But no, absolutely, this becomes the holy grail for a lot of our brands that we work with. In fact, we have a metric that's called brand conversion rate, which is, who was not a brand champion, who became a brand champion. And for a lot of experiences that our clients are running, that becomes their goal.
Yeah, and I think the importance of brand advocacy and brand communities and really finding these tribes of consumers that are willing to really advocate on your behalf is super powerful, especially as you see advertising going away and people aren't really trusting these big influencers anymore. The role of the everyday consumer in driving influence and advocating for products is becoming super important.
Totally. As far as the advertising going away, Alan had asked, what evidence is there that the trend of brands moving away from traditional advertising? Are branded experiences an extension of that?
Yeah, I think the biggest evidence that we have at Pilot44 is just the challenges and the spaces that we're working on with all of our clients. They're all around, what does the future of advertising look like in the cookieless world? What does the future of brand building and engagement look like? Everyone's kind of caught on to this trend that the traditional ad formats will slowly phase out, and we will see more and more of this move to seamless advertising. I think the definition of traditional advertising will just change. I think there's still going to be ads out there. They're just going to be a bit different. They're going to be interactive. They'll likely be video versus static. There'll probably be ways for you to actually interact with the ad itself and kind of choose your own adventure, which we're already seeing. So I don't think, quote unquote, traditional advertising is going away, but it's going to not be a banner ad anymore. It'll be a much better experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was thinking about the irony of a cookieless world. Toll House is going and delivering cookies for the same reason, to have that direct interaction.
Yeah, exactly.
Somehow we're already out of time. I always love to end with just a moment of any advice that you might have for anybody who's joining, anybody who's thinking about getting into experiences or starting to actually test branded experiences for their own company.
Yeah, I think, probably our biggest recommendation is to, not be afraid to get creative. And also, there's a lot of assumptions out there that things like experiences are really powerful for something like alcohol or beauty and skincare and makeup or luxury fashion, but there's room for experiences around every product. It could be toilet paper, it could be household cleaning solutions. Like there's a story to be told there, an experience to be built. It just requires you to think outside the box and really think beyond your product. And that's, I think, really where the magic happens.
That's awesome advice. Thank you, Mary. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you to all of you for joining. I hope you all have a wonderful day and a great rest of the week.
Great. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.